Am I the asshole for exposing my sister at Thanksgiving after she tried to ruin my engagement? I found out my sister had been secretly texting my fiancé for months, and she did it from inside my own house. She didn't even deny it when I caught her. She just smiled. Okay, so I know that sounds insane, but let me explain, because my family is now acting like I'm the one who destroyed Thanksgiving. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and my fiancé, Jake, is 30. We've been together for almost 4 years, and we got engaged about 6 months ago. Our relationship has never been perfect, obviously, but it has always felt safe. Jake is calm, loyal, kind, and honestly, he's the first person I've ever been with where I didn't feel like I had to perform for him. My older sister, Emily, is 31. My relationship with Emily has always been complicated. Still, as adults, I tried to keep things peaceful. Emily and I weren't best friends, but we were civil. She came to birthdays, family dinners, holidays, and when Jake proposed, she was one of the first people I called. At the time, she screamed into the phone like she was happy for me. Looking back, I don't think she was happy at all. The first weird thing happened 2 months after the engagement. Jake and I had gone to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. Emily was there too. Everything seemed normal until my mom asked about wedding planning. I mentioned that we were thinking about a small fall wedding, maybe 80 people max. Emily laughed, not a little laugh. A sharp, awkward laugh that made the table go quiet. Then she said, "Wow, that's brave." I asked, "What does that mean?" And she shrugged and said, "Nothing. I just think fall weddings are risky. People are busy, weather is weird. And honestly, long engagements are usually smarter." Jake looked uncomfortable, but I let it go. Then over the next few weeks, she kept making little comments. Nothing huge enough to start a fight over. Like when I showed her my dress ideas, she said, "That style is really trendy right now. You might regret it in pictures." When I told her Jake and I were looking at venues, she said, "Are you sure you want to spend that much money before you've even been married?" When I mentioned that Jake wanted chocolate cake instead of vanilla, she said, "Interesting. I didn't think he was the type to care that much." That comment stuck with me, because why would she know what type Jake was? At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Emily had always been passive-aggressive, so I told myself this was just her usual behavior. Annoying, yes. Hurtful, maybe, but not dangerous. Then Jake started acting strange. He wasn't distant exactly, but he was quieter. He was on his phone more. Sometimes he'd leave the room to answer texts. If I walked in, he would lock his screen a little too quickly. And I know how that sounds. But Jake had never given me a reason not to trust him. So instead of accusing him, I asked him directly one night. I said, "Is something going on?" He looked genuinely confused and said, "What do you mean?" I told him he seemed stressed and distracted. He rubbed his face and said, "It's just wedding stuff and work, I'm sorry." I believed him. Then came the night everything changed. Jake and I were hosting a small dinner at our place for my parents, Emily, and her boyfriend, Mark. It was supposed to be casual. Pizza, wine, nothing fancy. Emily arrived early, which was already strange because she is usually late to everything. Jake was in the shower when she got there, and I was in the kitchen cutting vegetables for a salad. Emily walked in, looked around, and said, "Wow, you really moved in together, huh?" I laughed because we had been living together for 2 years. I said, "Yes, Emily. That is usually what happens when 2 people share a lease." She smiled and said, "I just mean it feels very permanent." There was something weird in her voice. Then she walked into the living room and sat on the couch like she owned the place. A few minutes later, Jake's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He had left it there while showering. I didn't look at it at first. I'm not the kind of person who goes through someone's phone, but it buzzed again and again and again. 4 texts in less than a minute. I glanced down because it was lighting up right next to me, and I saw Emily's name. My stomach dropped. The preview said, "Don't tell her I said anything." I just stood there, holding a knife, staring at the screen. Then another text came in. "You know I'm only trying to protect you." I felt this cold wave move through my body. I looked toward the living room. Emily was sitting there, sipping wine, scrolling on her own phone like nothing was happening. I didn't open Jake's phone. I didn't touch it. I didn't say anything. But when Jake came out of the shower, I asked him to come into the bedroom. He saw my face and immediately said, "What happened?" I said, "Why is my sister texting you not to tell me something?" He froze, and that freeze told me everything. He didn't look guilty like he was cheating. He looked guilty like he had been hiding something. I asked again, "What is going on?" He sat on the bed and took a long breath. Then he told me. Apparently, Emily had been texting him for almost 3 months. At first, it was normal stuff. Wedding planning questions, family logistics. Things like, do you know if she wants a bridal shower? Or, would she be mad if mom invited Aunt Lisa? But slowly, the messages changed. Emily started telling Jake that I was more stressed than I seemed. Then she told him I had always struggled with jealousy. Then she said I had a habit of rushing into things. Then she told him that before he proposed, I had supposedly told her I wasn't sure he was ambitious enough. I never said that. Jake said he didn't believe her at first, but Emily kept framing everything like she was worried about him, like she was the only person brave enough to tell him the truth. She told him I had always wanted a perfect wedding more than a good marriage. She told him I was controlling and that I would probably change after the wedding. She even told him that if he ever needed someone to talk to, she was there, because she knew how difficult I could be. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I asked him why he didn't tell me. He said he didn't want to start drama with my family. He also said he thought Emily was just being dramatic and that ignoring her would make it stop. But it didn't stop. It only got worse. And then Jake showed me the messages. There were dozens. Some were subtle. Some were disgusting. One said, "I know my sister better than anyone. She loves the idea of being chosen. Just make sure she actually loves you." Another said, "You're the kind of man she always wanted because you make her look stable." Another said, "I know this is inappropriate, but sometimes I think you and I understand each other more than you and she do." That one made my hands shake, because that wasn't concern, that was flirting. Jake swore nothing happened. He said he never flirted back, and from what I saw, he didn't. His replies were mostly short, uncomfortable responses like, "I don't think that's fair," or "Please don't talk about her like that," or "You should bring this up with her directly." But he still didn't tell me, and that hurt almost as much as the messages. I walked back into the kitchen trying not to cry. Emily looked at me and smiled, not kindly, knowingly, like she knew exactly what had just happened. That was the first moment I realized she wasn't just being insecure. She wanted me to find out. She wanted a reaction, but I didn't give her one, not that night. I sat through dinner like my chest wasn't on fire. My parents talked about Thanksgiving plans. Mark talked about his fantasy football league. Jake barely ate. Emily kept looking between us like she was waiting for the explosion, but I stayed calm. After everyone left, Jake and I had the biggest fight we have ever had, not because I thought he cheated, but because he let my sister build a secret relationship with him behind my back, even if he didn't want it. He apologized over and over. He blocked her that night in front of me and said he would do whatever it took to rebuild trust. I told him I needed time. Then Thanksgiving came, and this is where my family says I went too far. Thanksgiving was at my parents' house. I didn't want to go, but my mom begged me. She said, "Please don't make this holiday tense. Whatever is going on between you and Emily, just put it aside for one day." That sentence alone told me Emily had already started spinning the story. I asked my mom what Emily told her. My mom said Emily was worried about me and felt like I was pulling away from the family because of Jake. I almost laughed. She was already setting me up to look unstable. Jake offered not to come, but I told him no. We were engaged. We were either going to face this together or not at all. So we went. The second we walked in, Emily was there in the kitchen, wearing this big fake smile. She hugged Jake first, not me. Jake stepped back immediately and said, "Please don't." The room went quiet. My dad looked confused. My mom looked annoyed. Emily looked wounded like she had just been slapped. She said, "Wow, okay, I was just saying hello." I said, "Were you?" She looked at me and said, "I don't know what you think is going on, but maybe we should not do this today." And that sentence lit something in me, because she had spent months doing it quietly, and now that I was ready to respond, suddenly it was inappropriate. Dinner started and the tension was awful. Everyone was pretending nothing was wrong, but nobody was relaxed. My mom kept changing the subject. My dad kept drinking wine. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear. Then Emily made her move. My mom asked about wedding invitations, and I said we were still finalizing the list. Emily sighed. A loud, dramatic sigh. Then she said, "I just hope you're not rushing because you feel like you have something to prove." I put my fork down. Jake whispered, "Don't," but I was done. I looked at Emily and said, "What exactly do you think I have to prove?" She shrugged and said, "I'm just saying marriage is serious, and sometimes people ignore red flags because they want the picture-perfect ending." My mom said, "Emily, enough." But Emily kept going. She looked directly at Jake and said, "I just think people deserve honesty before they make life-changing decisions." That was it. That was the moment. I said, "Great, let's be honest." Emily's face changed, just slightly. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. I said, "Should I read the messages where you told my fiancé I was controlling, or the ones where you said I only wanted him because he made me look stable? Or should I start with the one where you told him you and he understand each other better than we do?" The entire table went silent. My mom looked at Emily. My dad said, "What messages?" Emily immediately said, "That's not what happened." So I read them out loud. The room went dead. Mark pushed his chair back and stared at her. Jake looked down at the table. My mom covered her mouth. Emily's face turned bright red and then she started crying. But not normal crying, angry crying. She said, "You're humiliating me." I said, "No, you humiliated yourself. I'm just saying it out loud." My dad asked Emily if it was true. She said, "I was trying to protect him." Protect him from me at Thanksgiving dinner in front of my family. I asked her, "Protect him from what? From marrying me? Or from not choosing you?" She stood up and said I had always been jealous of her. She said I couldn't handle that she and Jake had a connection. She said I was insecure and dramatic and that this was exactly why she was worried about him. Then Jake finally spoke. He said, "Emily, stop, there is no connection. You made me uncomfortable for months and I should have told her sooner. That's on me, but do not pretend this was mutual." Emily looked like he had punched her. Then Mark said, very quietly, "Months?" That one word changed everything. Because apparently, Emily had told Mark that she barely talked to Jake. She had told him I was being paranoid and that I was accusing her of trying to steal my fiancé because I couldn't handle sharing attention during my engagement. Mark asked to see the messages. Emily said no. He asked again. She screamed at him too. Then she grabbed her purse and left the house. Mark didn't follow her. He stayed sitting at the table, pale, staring at nothing. Thanksgiving was basically over after that. Jake and I left about 20 minutes later. On the drive home, neither of us spoke. The next morning, the family fallout began. My mom called me and said that while Emily was wrong, I was cruel for exposing her in front of everyone. She said I should have handled it privately. I told her Emily had been handling it privately for months, and that was the problem. My mom said, "She's your sister." I said, "Then she should have acted like one." My dad is more on my side, but he thinks reading the message at the table was too much. Mark broke up with Emily 2 days later, and now Emily is telling everyone that I destroyed her relationship, embarrassed her on purpose, and turned the family against her. She sent me one long text saying, "I hope you're happy, you got everything you wanted." I didn't respond. Jake and I are still together, but we are not pretending everything is fine. We started premarital counseling, and he knows rebuilding trust is going to take time. I love him, but I also told him that if anything like this ever happens again, I'm gone. As for Emily, I haven't spoken to her since Thanksgiving. Part of me feels relieved, but also guilty. Because yes, I exposed her in front of everyone. And yes, I knew it would humiliate her. So now I'm asking myself if I am the asshole for exposing my sister at Thanksgiving after she secretly texted my fiancé for months and tried to ruin my engagement.